1% of people who actually create, you have so much leverage. There's just this huge arbitrage opportunity with AI because most people still think using AI is just playing around with ChatGPT.
Somebody actually said to me, in 6 months' time, you're going to be hiring more developers than creative strategists.
I think technical skills like coming into creative strategy because of AI is definitely a trend that will continue.
Jake Abrams is the founder of Odyssey Agency, a $500,000 per month performance creative agency managing ad budgets up to $2 million per month for brands like Caraway, Alo Yoga, and True Classic.
Known for merging media buying with AI-powered creative workflows, Jake is at the forefront of automating agency operations, building systems that replace bottlenecks with intelligent agents,
and redefining how creative teams scale in the AI era.
My estimate is 12 months and that's game over.
Do I, as a human, would I want my entire TikTok feed to all be fake people? Is that really the future of the internet, a feed of AI humans? I just don't think that's...
Jake, pleasure to have you on. You're the founder of Odyssey Agency, 500K a month in revenue you're doing through agency at the moment. You do growth, creative, you've managed brands like Caraway, Jones Road Beauty, and 100 plus more. I know you both do the media buying and the building of creative, which is really cool to see that all integrated. And I know you manage some pretty significant budgets on Meta, anywhere from 100K to 2 million plus. So yeah, really pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I guess I'll just jump straight in on what's top of mind. I mean, in the pre-chat, we were talking about AI, so I'm going to go straight to it. Like, how are you using it? What are you using it for? What's top of your mind?
I think AI is an interesting topic for people who are running agencies, media buying agencies, creative agencies, because depending on the time horizon that you're talking about, it either could be talked about as an apocalyptic, horrible thing, or it could be talked about as this amazing thing that unlocks productivity and all these other amazing things. So I'll just talk on a short-term, medium-term, and long-term basis. Short-term, there's just this huge arbitrage opportunity with AI because most people still think using AI is just playing around with ChatGPT. And if you're the person that's really learning all the other tools, learning workflows, multi-step AI workflows, things like that, you just have a huge opportunity because the perceived value of what you're doing is still basically the same, but the time investment that you need to put in is actually way less, or you could get like more volume for the same time investment. So short term, if you're on the cutting edge, it's a huge arbitrage opportunity. Medium term, I think people's expectations of costs and output will naturally kind of shift, where people assume that everyone has figured out how to use these tools. So medium term, there's still, I think, like a really awesome opportunity to just be the best at building AI workflows and enabling teams with AI. And then I don't really know long term, honestly. We'll see. I know the official vision of Meta and Zuckerberg is basically fully automated advertising. In that case, maybe it's not good for agencies, and the way to build a business is just you have to be a brand owner. So I don't know about the long term, but at least like in the short term, in the medium term, I think there's just so much opportunity. So I figured I might as well just learn everything as quickly as possible, and then I'll be fine.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack there, right? Because I think that to get change like this to be really instilled into your team as the founder, CEO, you've got to be the person who really drives it forward. And what I found is personally, when I'm doing projects myself, so when I'm actively involved in like building workflows, directly reviewing the work of people who are making the AI tools within the company, I find that's what ends up driving things forwards. If I just kind of outsource and say, hey, can you just go figure out some tools? It never ends up happening. So, and I know that you've got a very similar mindset on this, where you're actively hands-on building, right?
I've always found, really since I started making content, that the best way, you basically accomplish two things at once, where if you're building out these resources and all of the stuff for your team, that helps educate your team, that helps keep you on the cutting edge, and then you can document that and use that for content as well. So you're you're helping your company, you're helping yourself, and then you're also can like build a personal brand while doing the same work stream. So yeah, like I'm trying to figure out things like N8N and gum loop and things like that myself, because I'm not going to learn how it works by outsourcing it to someone. But once I figured it out, then maybe I can like bring someone in and help.
Yeah, we're going down a pretty similar path here because like I've built a few things in N8N. I've stolen some templates from places and tweaked them and updated them. And then I've got it to a point where I'm like, I don't understand how to take this a step further, but at least I've got to that point where I'm like, okay, I've got some kind of a result and now I'm going to go work with the developer to actually do the rest of it, right? And somebody actually said to me in our team almost 6 months ago now, he's like, Shabazz, I think in 6 months' time, you're going to be hiring more developers than creative strategists. What do you think about that statement in terms of like where we're going with things?
I think that they like the person at the top, at least like within creative strategy and creative organizations, the person at the top, the quarterback, like the point guard, needs to be the person with good creative taste, and they have to see the whole field and they have the vision, and they're, able to help people give the right inputs and then evaluate the outputs. But I think I do kind of agree with you that the other resources that are kind of like reporting to them or helping them are probably a lot more technical than they used to be. Because like if you actually have tried to build out a workflow within something like N8N, and you want to build out something really impactful, it gets pretty complicated, actually. Like I'm a non-technical person. I'm basically just uploading screenshots of error messages to ChatGPT and asking it to tell me what to do next. So yeah, I think technical skills like coming into creative strategy because of AI is definitely a trend that will continue.
Yeah, and I think what you just said there is right. Is like asking ChatGPT how to help you to solve the problems, and that's how you get a non-technical person to become a bit more technically minded, right? And I think there's a mindset shift as well, because a lot of people who are, let's say, traditionally from a creative background, they kind of shy away a little bit from tech stuff. I'm making a generalization here, but like I found that at least within the people I've recruited and worked with, they want to be creative, they want to be visual, they're artists, they do photography in their spare time, they've got a passion for creative stuff. And then when you ask them to build a workflow in a tool, all of a sudden it doesn't quite match up with what they're naturally inclined to do, right? And I always find that's a bit of a conflict. I don't know if you found something similar.
Yeah, it is actually. I had an experience working in marketing for a coding boot camp. It was one of my jobs when I was younger, and it actually was an amazing experience because basically everything that I learned was that all the developers are just Googling stuff and looking through forums and things like that to solve their problems anyway. Like no one actually memorizes any of this stuff. So the biggest gap, honestly, from making that transition from creative who can't handle anything technical to creative who can do some technical work is really it's like a mindset thing. Most people are capable of it if you just don't have that defeatist mindset that I can't do this.
Yeah. And I think for anybody who's out there who's doing freelance work or, maybe running a small agency, I think getting into that subset of people in the Venn diagram between creative and understands system building and like how to work with code or even just vibe coding, to some extent, or at the very least knowing how to instruct a developer to work with. I think those people are going to really win in the next 6 months, 12 months.
I think so. I think I'm curious to see what parts of the process are fully replaced by AI first. Like obviously, like what people write about and post about and brag about is very different, I think, from the reality. Like all the lead magnet posts about I built this AI agent that, or I have this team of 40 AI agents that do everything for me. I'm very skeptical of those. I think some people are figuring out to a degree, but the parts that I have seen AI replace of the creative process, like the manual research, anyone who's actually looking through Reddit or manually doing any sort of research is a dinosaur. Like it just type in what research you want the AI to do and it will come back pretty immediately. There's things with analyzing ad account data now, where Motion has these AI agents. Very soon, if not already, you'll be able to just ask like a chat window, what's going on in my ad account? What are the iterations that I should be doing? Those sorts of things. Yeah. So that whole research piece of it, I think was really the first to go. The writing part of it, I think AI is pretty good at getting scripts and things like that to maybe 75, 80%. But taking it the last 15, 20% still requires a human from what I've seen.
Yeah. I think people have different approaches to this. When I write copy personally, what I do is I try to write it first myself without any AI, just because I always want to get that thought out. There's clearly a thought that's made me want to write something, right? So I try to just get that thought out without diluting the point. Then what I'll do is I'll put it into ChatGPT to kind of fill out the point in a bit more detail, flesh it out into the format that I want it in. So if it's a LinkedIn post or a script for a bit of for an ad, I'll get it fleshed out, and then I'll come back to it and do a final pass on me actually doing a final tweak to it. So I have an AI sandwich. I have human, AI, and then human. That's kind of my stack and how I like to approach things. But that's pretty similar to you on in the sense of research, writing copy. We can talk about generative AI in a second, but I think on the research side, have you found that ChatGPT's deep research tool is useful for you? Have you tested it?
So it's called a typing mind or typing cloud. We have that set up for our team because of just the ability to set up brand specific AI agents, and you can plug in any model you want into it. So you can plug in ChatGPT, you can plug in Claude, you can plug in Gemini, anything you want, including what's it called, the research one, like Perplexity and things like that. So my research process is really just talking to the AI with the right model or the right plugin active, and doing the exact same process that I used to do manually, which is, scrape Reddit, look at Reddit for insights from the top voted posts, look at other communities, look at, even Facebook ad comments, things like that. I can just do that through prompts and through talking to the AI as opposed to having to do all the manual work. That's kind of my process.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, we've spent the last few years reading Reddit, and even before ChatGPT came out, it was a much more of a manual process. And interestingly, I saw a LinkedIn post, I think it was literally yesterday, that said that I know OpenAI did a deal with Reddit about a year ago, but the number of citations of Reddit inside ChatGPT has gone from something around about 1% to around about 5% in the course of the last month. So what that tells me is that basically ChatGPT is using Reddit as context far more often than it was in the past. I don't know what's happened in the back end as to why that's happened, but that's interesting for me, because I sent it straight to our growth strategist and I said, hey, the context of Reddit is becoming even more powerful inside ChatGPT. Make sure you're asking ChatGPT to specifically go through Reddit posts and find subreddits and find particular topics or areas of interest. So I think that's definitely a big shift in the last month. Something is changing.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but that just kind of reinforces the process that every creative strategist, every brand owner should be using. Is just, those are the answers to your next unlock, right? So how well you know how to prompt and give the right inputs so that you get outputs better and then put them in play. That's really the skill.
Yeah, I mean, just going back a second, you mentioned a tool. Was it called Deep Typing? I've not heard of that one before. What is it?
It's called Typing Mind.
Typing Mind. Okay. What is it, like an interface? And then in there you can select who you want to talk to, which AI model you want to talk to?
Yeah, it's basically just like a team-based interface. And somebody just posted about it on LinkedIn. That's how I came across it. But it's really cool because you can set up these different AI agents that are specific for certain things. So we have one for each brand that we do creative strategy for, and they are given context that is specific to that brand, like, the brand guidelines, the personas, anything else that we can give it that will help it know the brand better. And then you can also have knowledge bases that are shared across everything. So we can have a knowledge base of how to be a creative strategist or how we do creative strategy at Odyssey, and that can be shared across all of them. So yeah, just like that kind of setup has been really helpful, just given the number of brands that we work with and the fact that we do want the context for each one to be very specific to that brand.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess for me, I break down AI into two things, right? It's context and then prompting. So it's like, what context are you giving it first? And then like, how are you doing the prompts? So what you're saying is you're providing every piece of context you can provide in terms of methodology, but also brand information, in order to improve the output. That's smart. We've played around with custom GPTs, but I think the way that you do that with that tool sounds actually better because you're able to choose the different tools. And it sounds like you can actually string them together. So you can have multiple different bits of context added in one place, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the last piece that I haven't really operationalized, but I know people who are just smarter than me in this world are doing is the process of like AI that watches every single frame of every single video. That to me, once I found that exists, that's like a holy shit moment, because if you could have AI watch every single frame of every single ad that's going on in this ad account, and it can also watch every single frame of every single competitor based on publicly available Facebook ad library, you can start to imagine some pretty amazing possibilities of insights that you could get from that. It's pretty crazy.
That's interesting. I'll have to send it to you afterwards, but I built an N8N workflow that actually scrapes ad library. I think I might have mentioned it to you before, where it gets the transcript into a sheet, it gets the actual video, and it sends it into an Amazon bucket, puts it into the sheet. But it also, interestingly, I've got a Gemini node in there. So Gemini is very good for computer vision. So like looking at what's going on inside a video or an image. And it breaks down visually what's happening in the first third, the second third, the last third, but also in the hook. So we've basically got like a sheet built for any ad library of a competitor that we want to scrape, and then that becomes context. At the moment, I've not actually done anything with that in terms of putting it together with all the other automations that we're doing, but even that in isolation, you can upload that into then GPT and then prompt against it and say, hey, look, here's my competitor's ad. Look at the ones that have been running the longest. Have a look at what's going on in the ads, and come up with a script or a visual concept that you think will work. So that's been an interesting one for me. You mentioned about motion building AI agents, and we're actually building one for motion at the moment. So just to kind of like, I guess, a hot take, if you want. I hate using that phrase, but hot take. What I've found so far is that what problem we have in the agency, right, is like, and you no doubt have exactly the same problem, is like you have a certain number of briefs in the system, and then you have a certain amount of post-production resource. And this thing is always going up and down like this, right? Sometimes there's too many briefs and not enough editors. Sometimes it's the other way around, right, where you've got not enough briefs and too many editors, and you can never get it to like a perfect harmony. The way that we've tried to solve this problem previously is by having open briefs. An open brief is where an editor can basically pick up an existing ad and iterate on it, given some framework for iteration. Grabbing an ad, changing the hook, or grabbing an ad, changing the order of things around a little bit, but ideally keeping the same copy, the same general angle, but changing some smaller, visual elements, which is usually what editors are better at, right? But I think the AI agents that we're building for motion, and again, you can probably build these in N8N or anything else. What I found actually pretty good is the iterations of image briefs. So, okay, back to the whole resource thing. So if you're able to get into a situation where the editor can, in a way, brief themselves, you basically completely delete that issue. It doesn't exist anymore, because if they've got free capacity, you basically can say, hey, go and make your own open briefs, and they have to hit a certain number of briefs per week, right? So, if they've got to do 5 briefs a week, but they only received 3 from a creative strategist, they've got to go and then make up the other 2 using some kind of a brief. So what we've been playing around with, what we did before was open briefs, but now we've gone more for trying to build an agent where you get an image, and it's working much better for images at the moment. I'm still working on the video one. For the image ad, you basically say to Gemini, hey, look at this image. Think about what you might change next in an iteration, and you give it the context that you do paid social and you've got this kind of brand, blah, blah, blah. Gemini is very good at that, but then I find that GPT is actually better at writing the brief itself in a tabular format, clear to understand. So what Motion have actually done is allowed you to string those 2 different models together. So you're using not just Gemini on its own or ChatGPT on its own, but you can kind of take the output from one and put it into the other one. And I think that's where this kind of like process of workflow building is getting interesting. Leveraging the strengths of different AIs and using them to do stuff. So I can definitely send it to you when it's up and running, but the image brief writer, I'd say, is pretty solid. Like I can literally give that to our graphic designers and say, hey, go and use this, and they'll go and make ads from it.
It's like ready. Yeah, like ready to execute.
It's ready to execute. Yeah. The video one is, I'm still working on it. It kind of gives a description of what you should do, but it's not quite descriptive enough for the editor to know what to do with that. There's still a lot of gaps in like what you'd have to explain to the editor to get them to get the point of what it's trying to get you to do. I don't know, that's a bit verbose, but I'm definitely having better results with images than videos at the moment. So yeah, that's just something I'm working on.
Like that feels, because the biggest inefficiencies in creative process and at both agencies and in-house are those handoffs, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the human to human handoffs of like, that's where there's always like the 1 day delay or the 2 day delay, and multiply that by, a couple of times. And that's like the entire problem. So if you can, like, if your agent can make the executor self-sufficient and just automatically feed them the exact right thing, that's pretty amazing. Like, I mean, that's game changing.
Yeah, I think so. So just talking about bottlenecks in the process there, because I'm always thinking about this as well. Initially, I set like a service level agreement internally of trying to get from the point that you start writing a brief to the point that it's launched of like 7 days. And for some periods of time, we actually got it down to like 3.5. And this includes like getting approval internally and through clients. But I want to ask you the question, where do you see, and you talked about those handoffs, like where do you see specifically the most slowdowns in the process? And do you have some kind of a deadline for making creative once it's been briefed?
Yeah, this is the number one problem that I've been working on. And I think just as you scale, as you add more people and more complexity into the process, it just gets harder, right? Like if I was back when we were a 6-person agency and I was doing all the ads, like me and one other person were doing all the ads, it wasn't an issue. For something where it's something brand new needs to be shot, the timeline that we typically try to do is we kick off, we give the strategy within a week. And it's a strategy that encompasses basically like 25 to 30 concepts. Parallel path, the shipment to the creator who's going to be shooting it, or if it's an in-house shoot, the shipment to us. Shoot within 5 days or so, a couple of days of editing, and try to turn it into something that's fully ready to launch. I would say like maybe 3 weeks after that kickoff. And then you have a library of assets and you can start, churning things out a lot faster because you don't have the bottleneck of it has to be shot. So getting the product shot, like the initial assets, is the first and biggest bottleneck, I think, that we have.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the timelines I'm talking about are post-production. So this is not including getting the assets. And that's always been the slowest part because you're dependent on, production studios, a client, a content creator, and yeah, even getting the product to them in the first place. And then you have consumable products where you'd hope they keep it intact, but then like 2 weeks later, they've like chunked it away.
They never do.
They never do. So you've got to sending them a fresh product that delays things by another, 3-4 days or whatever. Yeah, and I think we all know in this game, it's all about speed, speed of testing. The more you can test, the more often, the more learnings you get, and the better the overall result. So, yeah, if you had a perfect situation, like how would you try and get that down from like 3 weeks to 1?
I think like one is you just have to work. Like this is what I learned working at a large agency is it's always working backwards from the date and a day by day schedule that gets you to that. Right. So like that's like project management. So you basically like you should day 2 or like day 1 of the kickoff, you should ship product to all creators who you want to think about using for the next 3 months. So like you're already ahead of that. right? You should have like a library of pre-approved concepts already. You should, anything that leads to back and forth, templatize that. Like seeing feedback about caption designs, just templatize that, get that pre-approved. Anything about, you can probably think of other things that happen in the post-production process, but anything that keeps coming up, get pre-approved ahead of time, and then set the right expectations that we're going to stick to that. So that's always the hardest part. Hardest part with post-production. And then just setting, I honestly hate doing it to people, but you have to give people a number that they have to hit every week and every month. It's the only way to manage people. So that too.
Yeah, there's like, I always quote Parkinson's law, which is like work will always take the time allotted for it. And if you don't set a deadline for things, nothing ever gets done. And that's just the truth, right? I kind of like have to, as a business owner, like in the end, like I've got to create accountability around myself because otherwise it just doesn't happen. So I put false deadlines on myself by like telling people I'm going to do things by a certain date, and it definitely works on me. So I know if it works on me, then it works on the team as well. And I think everybody, to have like a really high performance team, everybody's got to have that mindset of like, oh, we accept this accountability. It is what it is. If we're going to be good, we've just got to accept that there's deadlines and time to get things done. And it took me honestly quite some time in business to get to that point where, I accepted that accountability on myself. It took some time.
Yeah. Most people don't. Most people will just blame someone else, right?
Yeah. And I think it kind of goes against like the reason why you go into business, because you want freedom, flexibility, you want to be creative all the time, you want to try new things. But the truth is, like, you can only do that in bursts. Like you can't always do that, because if you do that all the time, nothing actually gets done.
It's true. Yeah. I'm curious how you, like, your timelines are really good, really impressive what you described to me. How do you manage through client feedback, like not letting that get out of hand, or, if they didn't comment on something in round one, but in round two, it's being, because I think you and me as growth marketers and most people kind of know it is a speed game. And my worst thing is when people have feedback on like the end card, to the point where I just don't make end cards anymore, because it's like 99% of people won't even get there. But like, what's your strategy for managing through feedback to get to the results that like both you and the client actually want?
Yeah, some of the strategies that you've already mentioned. So for example, with the end cards, we'll get them pre-approved. If it's something that's, let's say, a graphic design static, like we'll get the whole kind of the way it looks and feels pre-approved. And then we'll recycle that again with lots of different images and headlines and sub-headlines. So that definitely speeds things up. We have a guy who does compliance internally. So for some of the health and beauty brands, where you can only say certain things in the copy, you can't make claims which are false or medical or whatever. We have a guy internally who helps us to review that copy, which means that it doesn't then go to a client and they're then like, oh, this is not compliant, then pushes things back. And generally when you have a bigger client, they have like one person who does compliance on copy, and they become the bottleneck to your process. So the better you can get that copy, the more compliant you can get that copy before it even goes to the client, the more time you're going to save. Other things we do, we built our own software to run the whole process, so that definitely helps. We can see where everything is up to, from brief through to the production stage, through to approval, through to the launching. And we're time tracking how long it takes at each one of those stages. So we have a timestamp at which it enters each one of those steps. And the whole idea is we try and identify, okay, if it's been in approval for 4 days or 5 days, like who's slowing it down? Is it us? Is it the client? Okay, if it's consistently the client, let's talk to the client and say, hey, dude, you're in performance marketing. You've got to sort your shit out, like approve this stuff fast. We need daily approvals, or, can you appoint somebody in your team? If you're the founder and you're too busy, can you just appoint somebody in your team to like do approvals 2-3 times a week? Or give us a general feel of like, what is it that you usually don't like approving? Like, where do you run into a problem? Because sometimes they'll look at an ad and they'll be like, I haven't got time to articulate everything out. I'm just kind of pissed. I'm not going to even comment. And like, that thought process is going through their head, but they don't articulate it or take the time to write it, especially when you've got so many variations, so many ad sets to go through. We do that. And one thing we actually do is we have an approval so we have like a first approval where it's approved internally, and then it goes to the client. They then approve it. If they don't approve it, it comes back to us. But sometimes we basically ask them, say, hey, look, if we make these changes, can we just skip your second approval? And that definitely speeds things up. So a lot of clients accept that they just skip second approval. And the best clients are the ones who don't need to approve anything. And that's amazing, because then we get our averages down. That things just fly through then, because we're given a bit more freedom, leeway. And with those clients, we just say, hey, look, if there's a problem post-launch, just tell us. Just keep an eye on the ad account, keep going through what's being launched. If you see a problem, just flag it to us. We'll either take it down, or if it's working, like maybe we'll just fix it on the next round.
Yeah, that's how I was when I was a client. Like it depends on the brand, but it does depend on the brand. I think another way that I'm trying to get around it too is just with whitelisting too, and just say, like this video doesn't even run through your page, right? Yeah. So if it's not really exactly the brand voice, or maybe this one thing that I think would make the thumb stop amazing, but it's a little weird, is it really that much of a risk if it's not even running through your brand page? So more of that is a strategy I'm trying to use.
We do the same. I'd say like at least 50 or 60% of our ad spend is from like third-party pages now, and not from the brand pages. And it definitely helps with approvals, because we have situations where we don't need to get approval on stuff that's run through third-party pages, but we do need to get approval from when we're running through the brand page, and that's quite a common setup. And that definitely helps to get the average down on speed. And I find it funny, because we as agency owners, right, we think about speed all the time and volume, but often when you talk to a brand for the first time, this is like an alien concept. It's like, oh, let's make a campaign and I hope it works, and then we might make another one.
Yep. Yep. It's true. And then a lot of brands will complain that agencies are slow because, and I'm sure like people complain about us with that too. Yeah. It's really an ops game at some point. That's kind of the point that we've hit. And what at times we've even just struggled with is just the ops and systems needed to get 25 to 30 people all rowing in the same direction and all feeling accountable every week, every month, every quarter. It's hard.
Yeah, it is tough. It is tough. It's a system, but it's also like a mindset thing as well, right? Towards performance. I have quite a nuanced question for you, actually, because it's something that I thought about a lot a couple of years ago, and I kind of want to know which way you went with it. So we have pods that run certain brands, and I'm sure you have something similar. And previously we had our post-production team, or like, let's say our editors and designers, like within the pods. So you'd have a media buyer, you'd have a creative strategist, and then you'd have an editor, maybe a designer, right? So like 3 or 4 people. And this also applies brand side, because I've seen brands run these similar kind of like pods for different products or countries or whatever. Eventually what we started to scale upwards, and as the kind of like number of editors and designers we got increased, I started to realize that, hey, these people aren't kind of really being managed properly, because sometimes they haven't got enough briefs. Sometimes they don't really know how to upskill, because the creative strategist hasn't got the vernacular, the language, the verbiage to actually explain to the person, I don't like this because, and here's how to fix it. And we ended up actually switching, having our editors and designers out of those pod teams and putting them into a completely separate post-production team that runs as a separate unit with a manager. And basically the pods mainly interface with the manager. So they send the brief to the manager checks it, allocates it based on availability, based on skill set, based on the fatigue of the team. If they've been working on a client for too long, they might switch them around. So I don't know which camp you're in, because I think both can actually work, and we have had success with both. And there's pros and cons. So I don't know how you guys have your thing set up.
We have them in the pods right now, but I think that's actually really interesting. An interesting way of doing it. And I definitely don't have it figured out. So, I think I'm open to testing it, honestly, just because I definitely don't have it figured out. Have you boiled it down to, exactly how many video deliverables a video editor should ship every month? Like to that level of detail?
That's the golden question. So I've tried to solve this problem in the past, and if anyone's listening and has tried to solve this and has a solution, I definitely want to talk to you. So I created I drafted a points matrix. So I came up with, okay, look, if it's a video brief and you've got 3 variations and you'd want it in 2 formats, I calculated a certain number of points. And then I came up with the whole matrix of like the different types of ads as well. So also like whether you needed to select the footage, whether the editor needed to select the footage, or whether it was pre-chosen and given to them by a strategist, because that impacts the timeline as to how much work they can do quite significantly. So I added all these different variables together, made this big sheet as a matrix, and I can send it to anybody who wants to destroy it and tell me it's rubbish and tell me there's a better way of doing it. And I tried to implement it to the team, and it didn't really work. And I think it just took too long to try and figure out how many points each brief was to then actually we spent more time
complex
planning it. It was too complex. In my head, I still believe that there's a way of doing it with AI where it can read the brief and it can understand the number of variations and it can work out an estimate on the number of hours. And that is something I'm definitely going to test out probably in the next few months when we launch our new version of our internal software. But I think that how we've kind of landed on it now is I have like a rough cut idea. We do time tracking of our team, but I don't trust that that's like a very good way of getting performance out of people. How we generally do it is like, okay, creative strategist, you can do roughly around about 30 briefs per month. But if you're doing 10 briefs and your ads are crushing, I don't care. The primary metric, honestly, is like performance. Is like, are your ads bringing revenue? Are you hitting target ROAS? Like, what's the quality of the thinking behind that as well? So like, did you put good research into it? Let's see your conclusions. Like, why are you doing the next ad? And honestly, if you did 10 briefs and you smashed them, I don't care. But I'd say like the sweet spot, generally speaking, we're finding is somewhere around 25, 30 briefs per strategist per month sent out. And then in terms of execution of the post-production team, generally speaking, it's anywhere between 3 and 5 briefs a week. So again, each brief is different, right? So graphic design brief, that's probably on the very low side. We can imagine that a designer will probably get through more like 10 briefs a week, something like that. Editors, max 5. But if they get, let's say, a long form video, that's the first time they're seeing the footage, they haven't worked on the client before, it could take them 3 days to do one edit that's 2 minutes, 3 minutes long. And like that is what it is. But I'd say on average, we're doing around about a brief a day, when we're at capacity. So the answer is always it depends. And I really hope I can get to the point where I can do time estimates and then come up with some point system, where we have, let's say you have 40 hours working in the week. We know that people spend time like going to the toilet and drinking tea and doing whatever. So like there's probably 25 working hours realistically in a week if you're really pushing it and you're lucky and they're working from home with no distractions of like, people flying around the house. So you're talking like 4 or 5 productive hours per day. So when you really boil it down, you want to just plan out around about 4 or 5 hours worth of work per day. So eventually I want to get to the point where AI is doing an estimation on that.
I'm going to use that 4 to 5 hours of productivity per day. Like that's it. Like that's what people have. So work backwards from that. That's smart.
Yeah. It's, you cannot expect more. And I don't include meeting time within that. I try to like minimize meeting time wherever possible. But, I think like, realistically, I mean, even as business owners where we're like incentivized by equity and profit and all this stuff, like if you truly think about how much focus work we can do in a day, like 4 hours is a good day. Like really and truly, we spend a lot of our time on Slack, on emails, calling people, on meetings. Man, I spend so much time on meetings. It's just like an insane amount, So like if I get 4 hours of focus work done on a day, that's a good day.
I'm on board with that.
Yeah. So what is your kind of like, what's kind of exciting you right now? Or like, what are the main problems you're tackling like right now, this week, last week?
Yeah, I think one is fully in-house production. That's a big thing that we've been working on for a while now, but now it's making up a much more significant portion of the content that we make. So we have an in-house director, shooter. We have like his crew. We're doing at least 6 or 7 full shoot days every single month. And a portion of those are like with nice cameras and lighting and all of that. So just taking more control over the production process has been nice because, we can get the shots exactly how we want them. We can, if something goes wrong, we can reshoot it we have full control over the timeline, all of that.
Yeah. So sometimes I think it's a bit of a fallacy working with content creators. Like we had one brand where we tested like 100 plus content creators making different bits of content, over different briefs. And it was always the top like 3 or 4 who'd always have like the top performing ads, and we just keep briefing them in the end. And we just didn't work with the other ones again. We kind of like test them on a brief, cancel them off. And like we spent a lot of effort and energy actually trying to get new people on board. In the end, I think quality of execution is like really important. And I think I actually spoke to a brand owner the other day who said that they do a content day once every 6 months where they literally get everybody together in a house or in a location, and the founder goes down, shoots the content. They get a bunch of actors on board. They literally shoot it and direct it themselves in person, even UGC type content. And they're finding that they get like a good bank of content they can use for the next 6 months. And that in comparison to, working directly with content creators, it just doesn't seem to get the same result. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing, like having control. Have you found that having control is giving you a better quality output?
Yeah, more predictable timeline, more predictable output. And it's probably it's maybe 50% of our content now, maybe 50%. And it can be more cost effective, even when you're shooting with nice cameras. If you're getting 10 concepts done in a day, that ends up being potentially more cost effective than payments to creators. So there are a lot of really talented creators out there, and working with them, we're going to continue working with them because that's like, they're good at making internet native content. Like they're already good at TikTok. So like they'll be good at making TikToks for the brands that we work with. But we just don't want to be fully dependent on it. Like if it's the main thing that we do, it's kind of crazy to just third party all of it. It doesn't really work.
I do agree with that. And I think that content creators in a way are their own creative strategists. So, you've got to work with the ones who know what they're doing. I found a good hack, and I guess you've probably done something similar as well. In the past, and I think other people have made the same mistake, what people do is they just send a brief. Let's say they use Incense, like a platform, to go and find the content creator. They'll send a brief to the content creator and just wait for the content to come back and never have any interaction with them whatsoever, other than this one document and the one payment. And it's this cycle of just faceless, nameless, lack of interaction. And the problem I find with that process is they don't really understand the why behind things. They don't really get why you're trying to do things, like how conversions work, like what you've got to say and how you've got to say it to, convince people. And at the same time, remaining genuine to what they believe. So one thing that we've started to do recently is every creator we bring on board, we just interview them as if they're like an employee we're bringing into the team. So we'll jump on a call with them, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, we'll get to know them, find out a bit about their life, what their thoughts are on the product itself or the product category. If they've not received it yet, maybe they've tried something similar in the past. And we try and see if they're actually a fit. Like, do they know this product? Do they know the audience? Have they suffered the pain point themselves? If they've literally suffered the pain point themselves, the content quality is significantly better. If they have not, it just comes across flat. Even if the actors is still, you can still tell the average audience knows. Yeah. So it's like almost like an interview process, and we go through like a bunch of people before we find the right ones for the right audience.
I think that's really smart. We've bounced that around honestly too, and I think this is like the confirmation that I need to actually do it, because if you don't ever talk to them, they just don't feel accountable to like hit your timeline or give it their best swing. Some of them do, but it's just so much more unpredictable when if they've met you and you're building a long-term relationship, it's just going to be way better.
Totally. And what ends up happening, right, in the conversation is you end up talking about some of the pain points around the product, and you actually end up co-ideating to the actual brief. So what we try and do now is, like, off the back of we don't write the brief until we've actually had the call. Once we've had the call, we then go back and write the brief and be like, okay, you mentioned this talking point, write that down. You mentioned that talking point, write that down. And then you send the brief, and it's things you've already discussed with them that will resonate with them. And it's not just some random script or some random talking points that they're not going to be able to, sing to. In fact, we found that works like really well, gets good, genuine content. That's like way more believable.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think the next thing I'm going to do, this is something I've been thinking about the last few days, is like we use Fireflies in the company. So Fireflies for call recording.
Same here.
Yeah, and like I'm thinking about getting all those interviews we've had with the content creators and actually trying to get that and turn it into the briefs. So that's another thing I'm going to work on probably next week if I have some time.
So like an N8N that reads the notes or reads the whole transcript and then can just generate a first draft of the brief from that. Yeah,
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, I think there's a way of downloading the MP4 directly from Fireflies. So I think just literally downloading the MP4, probably put it into Gemini, get it to like read it as to what's going on, or even just the transcript is probably good enough. Yeah, the one thing with the transcript I need to check is does it split the voice? Because I know sometimes like we had this problem where we were trying to get transcripts from a video where it didn't know which character was which. So I need to just check that actually. If anyone out there has done this, like hit me up. I definitely want to know. But yeah, so more so now like getting the qualitative information from people, using AI to then turn that into a specific brief, then get them to go back and shoot it in a way that's like genuine to them. That's like the TLDR of what we're working on.
Yeah, I think to me that's the AI that I get excited about. It's like connecting these different stages of the creative process and making it more automated and making it run more smoothly. So like that, and if you're better at that, then you can be more profitable or lower your prices or just be faster. So there's a huge incentive to figure workflows like that out. I get really excited about that. Do you think in the next 6 months or the next year that most brands, it will just be text to final output? Where like if I'm, a makeup brand, there's no shooting at all for most of my ads. I'm just like, I'm using, VO3 or something like that for most of my ads.
Oh man, this is like literally top of mind for me right now in a really significant way. So there's some things which you can definitely do text to video on, like when you don't have the product present and it's just somebody talking to the camera. We've made some stuff in VO3 now, which is like honestly absolutely imperceptible. Like you cannot tell the difference, and it's very expressive. Like the tonality, the intonation in the voice, the way things are saying things, the angle at which they're. We had this one clip of a lady in the kitchen holding an AI creator in the kitchen chopping carrots, and the angle at which it was taken from, and the reflections on the knife. It was just insanely real. And we prompted it in such a way where we said, hey, like make this look like it was taken on an iPhone. So I'd say like when you don't have the product in the shot, getting AI UGC to look real, VO3 absolutely crushed it now. But of course, we're limited to 8 seconds at the moment in terms of the audio. And then you have to string together clips. And if you string together clips, you lose that continuity of the character. You can't keep that character in frame. So we've been playing around with doing it for hooks. So having like a sub 8 second hook using VO3 and then having real content creators then cover the rest of it. But I know that the 8 second limitation is going to be unleashed at some point pretty soon. And when that happens, like, oh man, the game's about to change. In terms of preserving products, that's then a different question. It depends on the product. If you're talking apparel, it's very easy to replicate apparel because it's a bit loose, it's a bit like flexible. If it's a bit different, it looks a bit different on one person to the next. So what we do is we use Flux LoRa. So it's called a LoRa, which is a model. You train the model with multiple images of the product. You then use Flux. So you then use a tool called Flux, which you can access on www.foul.ai. Just go on there, and you can access it. You use Flux to reference one of the models that you've trained a product on, and then you go and generate stuff, and that's working pretty well in terms of apparel. When it comes to preserving a specific product in the details, generative fill is good, like Photoshop, where you just keep the original image, like a real image, and then you just fill around it. We've also used IC Light 2, which is available on foul.ai. IC Light 2 does a pretty similar thing, but it preserves, it creates good lighting and shadows. Because one of the things that is a bit weird is when you start to generate the fill and the shadows end up looking a bit weird and wrong and the lighting isn't quite right. So we found that IC Light 2 is pretty good at doing that. So those are the things we kind of use in general for products. One thing I'm working on now is working with somebody who does 3D AI stuff, where we're giving them a model of it's actually like a bottle. So we made a model in Blender. We're sending them the model. From that, they're going to generate the environments, and we're just going to see how realistic that is.
That's cool.
Yeah, but we've had mixed results also with just masking the product and generating. So like there's a few things I'm experimenting with at the moment. Yeah. So I don't have like a firm answer for everything. It's just always, it depends, because like there's so many different concepts work better than others in terms of using Gen AI. Some are just not possible right now, but there's a lot that's like getting crazily good. So to answer your question, text to video, will we be doing that in 6 months? I mean, we're doing it right now, but we're also going to see the number of concepts that you can pull off using text to video like amplify massively, which means that the creative strategist now just becomes also like a producer. They can actually make stuff themselves with their own hands. But I think there'll be some things which are limited that, you just won't be able to pull off, especially around like holding products, moving them around, talking about them, bringing them in front of the face. Like I think that's going to take a bit of time before it gets to be accurate. But my estimate is 12 months and that's game over.
I believe it. I believe it. So, I think this is like the topic I'm just like most interested in is like, what does my feed look like in 12 months when what you just said is possible? And I could go either way, because I could say those like UGC creators with the not so authentic delivery, doing a fake podcast or like a fake testimonial. What really is the difference between that and a literal fake person like doing the same thing? What is the difference? There's not really that much of a difference, really. But on the other hand, do I, as like a human, like, would I want my entire TikTok feed to all be fake people, like fake humans? Like, is that really the future of the internet, is just a feed of AI humans? I would say no. Like, I just don't think that's interesting to people. I think people are interested in real people as well. So I think it's just a mix. I think it will be a mix. I think real, authentic, like if it's a touching moment with like a family dog or like, mom and daughter, I feel like that needs to have actually happened for it to resonate with me. Unless it's like a movie, which in that case, then it can be AI. But if it's presented as real, I kind of feel like it has to have actually happened. But maybe someone who's like 16 years old right now doesn't care. That's the funny part.
Yeah, man, I totally resonate with what you're saying there. And I think there's going to be some generational, and it's funny because like, I feel like I'm getting to the age now where I'm starting to say, oh, like the kids these days, and it just makes me feel old. But like, I mean, I'm only 38 or 39 now, 39. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling that generational gap. Like when I'm talking to like 16-year-olds, and like, I just wonder, will they care? That's same as what you're saying, basically. It will just become the norm. It's what they come to expect. For me, like, I just like to it sounds funny because I spend all my time doing advertising. Like I'd like to just not have Instagram on my phone because I feel like like what you're saying, it's too curated, and it's like I know that my feed is getting more and more AI, and I like just don't really feel that comfortable about it. Even though we're part of the problem. We're part of the thing that's actually making this happen. I just switch it off. I'm like, I don't want to pay attention to this. And maybe that's a generational thing. I don't know. So me personally, I don't feel affected by it. But I agree with you. If I see something online and it's like a touching story, I want it to be real. I don't want it to be fake, because then I'd feel like I've been duped, right? And I won't feel like something just won't sit right. And I think that sentiment will hang with the next generation as well, to be honest with you. But I just wonder how we can actually differentiate, because we're at the point where you just cannot tell. So will it be the platforms who are the ones will it be the government who then puts pressure on the platforms to basically put a tag in the corner to say, hey, this has been AI generated? There's already legislation in place to say that you have to do that, but nobody does it. Nobody follows the rule.
Yeah.
Like Meta has the rules in the background that says, oh, if it's AI generated, you've got to say it's AI generated. But like, when have you seen anybody follow that?
Yeah, nobody does.
No. Strange times, man. Strange times. But yeah, we'll wrap the conversation with me asking you a quick couple of questions. How long have you been in business, actually?
I started Odyssey in February of 2020. So a little over 5 years or so.
And if you could go back to yourself 5 years ago, what advice would you give yourself, knowing what you know now?
I would just have started trying to build an audience right away. I think that's that's the lever that unlocks really anything that you want to do, whether it's run a service business that's kind of painful or do something, do a product, do anything else. So that's what I tell everybody that I talk to who's younger than me is just if you can build an audience and stop being a consumer of everything and be the 1% of people who actually create, you have so much leverage. So that I would just do that right away.
Yeah, I love that. And you just reminded me there, the 1%, that's such a key thing. Because like you imagine 100, when you say 1% in numbers, it doesn't sound like a lot. But when you visualize 100 people in a room and you think, oh, only one person of those hundreds are making content, and it's probably even small. It's probably even smaller than 1 in 100 actually. You soon start to realize how much leverage it does create if you are that one person. I get that slightly. And then final question: if you were going to launch an e-commerce brand tomorrow, like what would you launch?
I don't know what I would launch, but I know what process I would use. So I think we talked a bit about this in on like the first conversation that we had, and you actually helped me direct me. But I would just look at these categories that already have traction. Like I would go to Callow data and I would see on TikTok Shop what is the weird category that's blowing up, whether it's like nasal spray. Like I keep seeing those boomstick TikToks, whether it's under eye makeup for dudes or anything else that's just easy to pull off that wouldn't require a lot of product development. That would just be like a TikTok product. And then I would try to find one that I think I could do better, and I would do like a slightly better version of it. That's probably what I would do.
Yeah, no, good answer. Good answer. Jake, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Shabazz.
Where can people find you online?
Just go to my LinkedIn, just like type in my name, Jake Abrams, and you can figure everything out from there.
Awesome. Take it easy.
Thanks, man.